Are we headed into a recession? That is the question that is on a lot of minds. And in today's show, we're going to talk about how to help make sure a recession doesn't ruin your financial, life, or retirement plans. Also, I welcome Jim Manning to the podcast. I'm very excited to have him as part of the podcast, and here's why. He has sat or is currently sitting in your shoes. He is an investor. He's had a successful career, and now he is a retiree. So he is asking the questions that are on your minds.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searens, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Welcome back to the Your Life, Your Money podcast, where we discuss thoughts, strategies, and actions to help you thrive in life, wealth, in retirement. I'm your host, Scott Searens, and actually I've got a new co-host with me today, Jim Manning. I'm very excited to have Jim with me on the show. I think you'll be very excited about this as well. Jim is sitting right in your shoes. Jim's an investor. He's had a very successful career. Jim is now retired. And so, Jim, first off, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Pleasure to be here and looking forward to discussing this important topic.
Yeah, I think not only today's topic, we're going to talk about recessions, but just more topics in the future that you and I are going to tackle. Like I mentioned, I think it's exciting, right? Because we're going to have conversations, and you're sitting in the same shoes as our audience. And so the thoughts that you have, the questions that you have, are questions that are probably on their minds and that they want to hear. So I really look forward to our conversations. I think they will as well. But before we dive in, who is Jim Manning? So let's talk a little bit about you. Let's get you introduced to our audience. And Jim, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Jim is a really good personal friend of mine. We've been friends for over 10 years now. A great family friend as well. And, our relationship and friendship has continued to build over the time and has been a lot of fun. But Jim, how about this? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, what you did for work. And I think, I mentioned that you're retired. So when did you retire?
Scott, great. Thanks. Well, I retired at the end of 2013. At that point, I was 67 years old. I wanted to retire at 65, but I looked at that point in my life, I wanted to make sure that I had enough money to live the lifestyle I wanted to live in retirement. And the other thing is I wanted to make sure I didn't have run out of money. So I decided to work an extra 2 years. And, as I look back at it, I could have retired at 65 if I would have had a plan, a financial plan, a solid plan in place to determine if I had enough money at that point to retire. And as I look back, I could have. So, but anyway, I've enjoyed retirement now. I've been spending a lot of time doing fishing. I love to fish, and I love to spend time with my grandson, a 12-year-old grandson who plays hockey and baseball and soccer and everything. And so I really enjoy his sports. And I really enjoy the fact that now I'm a grandfather. So anyway, that's a little bit about my career. And, I have a home in Florida, and I spend the winter down in Florida and up in Michigan for the summer. Got the best of both worlds. My daughter lives outside of Cleveland, so get a chance to visit her and drive down from Michigan to see them. But the other thing is, during my career and everything, I had the opportunity to travel basically all over the world and visit different countries, and including Brazil and Argentina and Switzerland, Europe, Canada, China. And I really enjoyed learning the cultures of the different people. But one common theme I noticed amongst every culture was the families and people they all wanted to live a happy life, have enough money to support their family, and do some fun things. It was a common theme. So it was interesting to learn the cultures, and that's kind of a background of Jim Manning.
And Jim, being very humble, I know we have a lot of great business conversations because I'm able to continue to improve my business and learn from a lot of your great experience. You mind just sharing a little bit more about about what you did on the business side?
Sure. Well, I worked for 17 years for a company that made elastomer dispensing and flow control products. What does that mean? These are little valves, primarily silicone valves that would be used in healthcare, personal care, food and beverage, household products. People probably most recognize these valves that are used in Heinz ketchup bottles, the upside down Heinz ketchup bottle, and the Gatorade sports bottle. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be president of this company and grow that business for 17 years, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's awesome. So I think now everybody's going to be looking at their Heinz ketchup bottle, looking at the bottom, going, "Wait a second! I just heard from the guy that ran that company. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat, right? Your product literally is touching lives worldwide."
It is, and we sold billions and billions all over the world, with about 30% of the products going to China and 30% going to Europe and the other 30% North America. So we felt very good that we could compete with the Chinese and be able to sell products right into their country.
That's really cool. And if I remember correctly, your product actually was up in space too. Wasn't the product utilized for was it the astronauts gear?
Yeah, the valve was used into the drinking system that go into the spacesuit of the astronauts to prevent water from escaping into their inside bubble face mask, which we had a problem. We got a call one day from NASA saying, "We've got a problem, Houston. We have a problem."
That's a call you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, so it was an interesting call that we got, and they said, "We've got a problem because the detergent that they use inside the mask to prevent them from fogging up when they walk in space was condensating and getting into the eyes of the astronauts, and to the point where they couldn't really hardly see, and they had to abort. I think they almost had to abort the mission for that particular time. So they said, "How fast can you solve this problem? We've seen your product out in the market. We think it might have a solution," and they were right. So we retrofitted, developed in a matter of time. I think it's several months. We were able to develop it and prototype it and get it into production to solve that problem. And it was very successful. And I think even today they're currently used.
That's really cool. Now, you said you like fishing. Any particular type of fishing that really draws your attention?
Well, I like to fly fish primarily, but I also do spin fishing and bait casting. And I fish for about a variety of species. I fish for trout and salmon and bass and bonefish over in the Bahamas. So a little bit of everything.
That's cool. So how often would you say you get out every week?
Well, I get out once or twice a week down here in Florida, and probably about the same up in Michigan.
Very cool. Very cool. And then you mentioned your grandson, and I've seen some pictures. I've seen the statistics as well. He is an all-star sports player. What sport is he? What sport's Jake off to next?
Well, Jake's into baseball right now. He's a second baseman, and he pitches a relief pitcher, but he's a good hitter. Got good batting average. I think he started the season out going for 3 for 4 the other day. So that was a pretty good start for the season.
Oh, pretty proud grandpa, huh?
Oh, you betcha.
I know you don't miss any games. I mean, I know you don't get to see them all in person, but with technology now, you don't miss any games. That's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, we get to see each game on an app that we have that we listen to.
Very cool. Well, Jim, I'm excited, as I had mentioned before, to have you on the show. I think, as I had said, there's going to be a lot of questions that you have that our audience is going to want to hear, discussions that you and I will have that will bring a lot of value and benefit to people. And so I'm just really excited to have you part of the show. Thank you for joining me. And I'm guessing that the people will feel that way today as we go through our discussions. And I, will tell them to, continue to subscribe on their favorite podcast player. So that way, they get notified as you and I continue to come out with new episodes, and we'll be continuing to bring value and benefit to them in areas of tax planning, thoughts and questions, how to build wealth, and, continue on track with their financial picture. So today's thoughts, we were, kind of talking back and forth, and today was, we're talking about recession, but I think that there's some more specific questions that are on your mind in regards to recessions. And why don't you talk about those, Jim? And so that way people kind of know the direction we're headed with our discussion, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. I put a few questions together as I thought through this, and one of the first questions that came to my mind was, in myself, is how can we tell if we are prepared for a recession? If we look at ourselves in the position we are today, and you hear about, recessions coming up, are we in one or about to come in one? How can we make sure that we're in a good position to weather this? So that's one. That's one of my thoughts. And the other is, during these recessions, people really get stressed out. They get stressed about their job. Are they going to be able to keep their job? Can they afford to pay their mortgage? What about their credit card bills? Going to keep up with them. And then as they see their investments start going down as far as value goes, it really causes a lot of stress. So, what can people do to minimize this stress and manage it effectively? So that's another question I'd like for you to address. And then why is it important that we have a plan now? If we look at the situation, we don't seem to be in a recession now, so why should we go ahead and put a plan together now? Could we just wait until we're definitely in a recession? And so if we put a plan together now, is that too early? Will we miss out on some of the advances in the market? Should we continue to still go? But I'd like you to kind of discuss that and talk about why we should have a plan before the recession even arrives. So that's a couple of my questions.
Yeah, sounds great. And I'm sure you'll have more questions as we go along too. And I think, one of the things that I was even gathering in your thoughts there and your questions, and I think this is something that, you're not alone. I think it goes through all of our minds is putting the word recession. I think we automatically feel or tie it to the stock market. And before I tackle your first question there, I think one of the things to really understand is just, high level, what is a recession? And typically a recession is, a couple, or what it was in the past is it was 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline. And, since actually we now have an institution called the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they actually officially declare a recession, which what they define it as is a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy lasting more than a few months. And typical indicators are GDP, which is gross domestic product, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Now, that's actual recession, right? So it's basically economy declining. But I think, you and others, I think we all tie that to the stock market, and rightfully so, because if the economy is declining, does that mean that, our investments are going to decline? The stock market's going to decline. I think with the stock market already on a decline through the start of this year, it becomes even more prevalent in all our minds. I'm assuming it's probably crossed your mind a few times too, right? Being in retirement and living off your investments. I mean, I'm guessing it's probably gone through your mind as well, huh, Jim?
Absolutely. At this point in my life, you want to make sure that if a recession comes along, that you have enough money to be able to live the lifestyle that you'd like to continue living through the rest of your life. Yeah.
And I get it. And that's the main point, right? How do we prepare ourselves? And I think was that your, what was the first question again? It was again, Jim?
How do we know if we're prepared for a recession? What are the things that we need to be looking at to tell us that, okay, we're prepared for this recession?
Great. So, and let's talk about some of the things of what the recession could potentially mean. Now, right now we're seeing in a lot of times why a recession happens is because the Federal Reserve raises interest rates. And so what does that mean to all of us? Well, if they're raising interest rates, what that could mean is that it means that it's tougher for corporations, companies like you used to work for, to go out and borrow money. And when it's tougher for them to borrow money, they might do less projects. They might not be looking for that, next package to put that valve into, because just money's tougher to come by. If they're doing less projects, they might need less people. And I think, recession's broken down into two. We could kind of look at this in two ways. People that are still working, what it could it mean to them? And then those that are already retired, because those that are still working, it could get scary. I mean, if companies have less money to be able to spend and utilize, then do they need to lay people off? The other thing is, as these interest rates continue to continue to go up, it also means that it's just more expensive for you and I and everybody else to go and get capital. So if you're looking, or if it's somebody that's using credit card rates are going to go up. If you're looking to use a home equity loan to do a new project, home equity loan rates are going to go up. If you're just looking for a loan to buy a car, or looking at mortgage rates, right? Mortgage rates have almost doubled over the last 6 months. So all of this means that the, basically ability to go and get money is tougher. And then spending starts to decline. Companies don't have as much money. Does that mean layoffs? Does that mean cuts in pay? And you can see how our minds could potentially spiral down this wrong path. So how can we prepare ourselves if this was to happen? And I'm not here saying that we're headed down the path of a recession or not heading down a path of recession. And I think when you had asked the question about fears, and maybe we talk about that, whether or not we're heading into recession in regards to that. But I think first off, whether we are or not, you need to have a plan in place. And how do we prepare ourselves? Well, let's first start with somebody that maybe is still working. One of the things that I would recommend, Jim, is that if they don't have this in place yet, the first thing that they need to do is build up some cash, meaning a reserve fund. Some people call it rainy day fund, some call it a reserve. But having 3 to 6 months of expenses, and if you're not comfortable in your job, if you feel that you could easily be laid off, maybe you want to focus more to that 6 months of expenses, because that's what it's there for. Is like, if something were to happen to you, then you've got a pool of money to go to be able to utilize to get yourself to that next job. And I think, that's one thing that kind of that first layer, whether we're headed to recession or not, is, do you have enough cash on hand? Do you have a reserve fund built up? And, Jim, a lot of folks that I work with, I talk about the 3 to 6 months, but a lot of them have 6 months, 8 months. Some of them have 1 year built up. And, that's probably a little bit too much cash on hand. But at the same time, it's what brings comfort to them. And when the furnace breaks, or if they were to lose their job, or if something were to happen, it really doesn't feel like an emergency to them. And, I've just noticed that having that cash on hand really helps keep people on that right track. The other thing is that's a good thing to do, especially with rates going up, is, you might want to look at paying down any debts, because, talk about adding some stress to your life. If you had a lot of debt going on, car loans, home loans, credit card debt, and then you were to lose your job because of a recession, that's your stress level is just going to skyrocket, sky high. And I think one of the things that would really help is paying down any sort of debts that a person would have. So again, still just focused on those that are working. I would, first off, do you have enough cash in the bank? Second thing is, paying down any sort of debts. And to me, those are two really good pieces. Now, you had mentioned earlier, and I think not alone, right? Kind of link this to the stock market. And what if the stock market were to also decline? What if it, drops a certain amount. And I think in that standpoint, if you're within 5 years of retirement, or if you're already retired, that's when you want to also start building up your war chest in your investment portfolio. Your pool of funds not subject to the same volatility that equities or stocks are subject to. And that way, if the market does decline like it is today, but if it continues to go further than today, you've got your pool of funds that you can go to make withdrawals from while the market bounces back up. And so I think, having that in place is how we can prepare ourselves. So a person who's still working, or a person who might be, within 5 years of retirement or already retired, is having that in place, again, prior to recession. If we're, waiting to the recession to make that strategy, in my opinion, we've waited too late because things may have already dropped. But having that strategy in place prior to, I think, and my feelings is that's what helps us get through, be prepared, and then get through the recession. Now, Jim, you've lived through the, just like I have, but, you saw it from, a corporate standpoint, the 2007, 2008 Great Recession. Overall, how did that feel to you? But then also, what were you seeing taking place, just in general, in the public, and any thoughts so that you felt were things that people looking back on that go, boy, I wish I would have changed and done differently, would have had me more prepared for that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott, and I'll share that because it's very vivid in my mind. I was 60 years old at that time, and as this recession started to take place, I was really concerned about my investments and what should I do? Should I lighten up on investments and pull cash out and things like that? And I didn't really have a plan, a financial plan back at that time to be able to develop the strategy that you just mentioned, as far as having a kind of a war chest available, so I could feel comfortable about that. So I didn't have that in place, and so I worried about it. But I decided to stay the course. But in talking to some of the friends or some of the people at that time, what are they good at? What were they doing? And I distinctly remember one of the person said, "Hey, I'm out of the market. I've totally got out of the market." When things started to heat up and look like we were definitely headed that way, that this person, liquidated all the stocks and sat on the sideline and wanted to wait it out. Another person I know decided that, hey, this stock market is too stressful and too risky, and I'm getting close to retirement, so I'm going to pull my investments out of stock and put it all in annuities, which could be a little safer, a little less risk for him. So, but those are the things that I saw going on, and luckily, in my case, I stayed the course and kept the investments. I didn't have to sell off any stock, but I didn't lose any money, and eventually it all came back and did better than it was at that particular time.
So let's kind of talk about a couple of the examples that you brought up there and I'm sure that the two people, that they weren't alone, right? Other people were doing similar things. And I think one thing is like when people sell off and go to cash, it's for this like instant feeling of comfort, right? They sold off, they went to cash. It's just this instant feeling of comfort. No matter which way the market goes, it just finally feel comfortable, because the market can make us feel, if we don't have a strategy in place, to me, the market can make us feel uncomfortable when it's going down. So they sold off, they, went to cash. Now that gave them a small feeling of comfort. However, we also, one, when did they sell? We don't know. Was the market already on its way down? The trouble is always having to make two right decisions. The one is when to get out, And then the other one is, when do we get back in? And I'm not sure anybody out there can make those two right decisions. I mean, we look at March of 2020 as a great example. During the pandemic there, the market went down so super fast, but the rebound, I mean, I remember some of the headlines. How long is this going to last? It's going, gosh, this could go on for years. And then what happens is, like, I think it lasted maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't have the exact facts on that, and then bounces right back up. And somebody that moved to cash, frankly, I think the hardest part for those folks that sell out is that then they don't know when to get back in. And it becomes a mind game of like, well, when do I get back into the market? Because I missed the rebound and now it continues to keep going back up. And so then do I continue to sit on the sideline and wait for the next correction? And then, next thing you know, you waited from 2008 to 2020 and you missed all of those gains. I mean, lots and lots of gains that the overall market had. And so one of the things is just back to what we talked about earlier, is just having that strategy in place, I think helps to eliminate, that need to feel like you have to make a knee-jerk reaction of selling investments and moving to cash. It typically tells me, okay, was there a strategy in place that aligns with how much future income that this person needs? And hey, if you were 60 and didn't retire until age 67, or was thinking 65 to 67, then, based on some historical averages, you've got time for the market to rebound. But yeah, so it sounds like it was pretty scary to you.
Yeah, it was. And it, at the time, it was scaring the hell out of me. But, if you look at some of the history and so forth, I think, as I recall, Scott, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the average recession last around 5.5 years?
I've got an article from Kiplinger, and I'll attach that to the notes that people can go to and see from our conversation here. So since 1857, the average length of a recession, 17 and a half months. How about that?
17 and a half months.
That's a year and a half.
Wow.
Just over a year and a half. And then to me, this is more interesting because that included the Great Depression, that statistic there. So even more interesting to me is since World War II, the average recession, the average length of a recession, 11.1 months.
I believe that 5.5 years is the frequency between recessions.
You got it. Yep.
Is that the number that kind of sticks in my mind?
Yep. So since World War II, every 58.4 months or so, just shy of 5 years. But you're right on the right track there. Just shy of 5 years is how often we see them. And, I think it's the pain that we always remember painful things. But yeah, if you think about it, I mean, let's just say a 30-year retirement, you could potentially see, well, divide by 5, right? Six, that'd be 6 recessions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we might as well start prepping our mind for it now, right? Because it's going to happen again.
Yeah. And so your point early on is put a plan together that makes you feel comfortable, and you don't have to stress out through that. I know right now in my position, I have a great plan I put together several years ago, and I'm not at all worried about this recession because I do have those safeguards in place that you just mentioned.
And I think the other is like so the two is knowing it's not if, it's when, and knowing also that, how long could it last? Now, it could last a long time. I think the 2007, that was about 18 months. But if you look at COVID, that was 2 months. We don't know how long it will last, but history has shown us that we overcome it. And if you want to look at averages, 1 year, yes, it could really stink for 1 year, but we'll get through it. And I think, one of the things for me is I find that it's like news articles, it's all of these different things that are out there trying to grab our attention that really start to increase those fears. I mean, I just pulled three, and I'll link to them so people can see them. But three different articles here. One says, has the U.S. economy really shrunk in early 2022? Is a recession near? The answer, and then it says no. Then the next article is, the world's in very early stages of very significant recession. And then another article says 3 signs recession fears are wildly overblown. I can see how easily, and if you stare at your phone every day, I know that you screenshotted and sent me a few articles too, talking about, is the stock market going to collapse and how far is it going, how far is it going to go? I mean, every day, in my opinion, the news loves to take advantage of downward trends to grab our attention. And that's also what can, I think, lead to a lot of these fears. And I know one of your questions was, how do we alleviate these fears? To me, one way is to have a plan in place. I know people aren't going to like the second one, but truly it's to turn off the news. It's to, realize, oh, we've been through this before. It's not going to last forever. And turn off the news, stop looking at the articles. Because to me, what was actually funny, Jim, this one article that, was saying, oh, the world's in very, very significant recession, early stages. When you actually dive into the article, it says, well, a recession is expected outside of the United States. And then it says, we think the United States could not go into a recession. So they were just trying to grab everybody's attention. And if you didn't actually read into the detail there, a person could walk away with a whole lot of fear of what might happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
And I think, it's just to really focus on, okay, hey, these news companies are out there to grab our attention so that they could advertise to us. Hopefully they are providing us with some good information, but let's not get too overly excited based on the headlines that are out there. I know you and I have had conversations before. Maybe you saw this in 2007, but almost where it's like the news can start to, push the public, or not the news, but the headlines, right, can start to push the public into just all believing that, yep, we're headed there. Might as well just buckle up. That's what's going to happen. We're going to be in a recession.
Yeah, looking back there, I think there was a lot of conversation, a lot of people, economists and so forth, that actually came out and said that we're talking ourselves into a recession. We are, all the news media and everything else, convincing people that we were bound and determined to be in a recession. It probably exacerbated it.
And then, and if you think about when the market actually rebounded back then, it was before the National Bureau of Economic Research. The market actually started rebounding before they even called the end of the recession. And that goes back to your point earlier of like, well, had some, or not point, but you're talking about some people that, maybe sold because they wanted to move to cash. How could anybody then time when to get back in?
Well, nobody's been able to figure that out to this point as far as timing the market goes. Even the greatest experts can't do it.
And I think that goes to back to the thought at the beginning of, one, cash on hand. Do you have enough? Again, call it your reserve, call it your rainy day fund. If you're still working, do you have enough cash on hand that you could get through a time period if you needed to go find a new job to get that income coming back in? I find that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is just not having cash on hand. They feel like it doesn't make a high rate of interest, and and it's just not making any money for them. And actually interest rates are going up, so it's going to get a little bit better, but they just, for some reason, if it sits there, they want to spend it. So I don't, whatever you want to do with it, go put it in an online savings account. Those tend to get a little bit of a higher interest rate, but I think that's kind of one of the mistakes I see, Jim, is that, is people don't have, enough cash on hand. I'm not saying don't overdo it, but 6 months, maybe a year tops, have some cash on hand if they're nearing retirement, because we've talked about not being able to time the market. So instead of trying to time the market, carving off that war chest, meaning looking at the next 5 years of your life and going, okay, hey, based on the lifestyle that I, live, I've got different sources of income coming in, like Social Security or a pension, but my lifestyle is more than that. So I know I'm going to have to go to my bucket of money to make some withdrawals. What do those withdrawals look like over the next 5 years? And take those withdrawals and carve them off into the war chest, that pool of funds that's not subject to volatility that stocks are subject to. And just by carving that off there, I mean, we said, the average length of a recession is 11 months, I think. Now, of course, that doesn't mean the average length of a market correction or of a bear market. But, if you kind of feel, hey, we'll get through this too, then if you've got 5 years set aside, if you feel like the market will rebound within 5 years, great. You've got enough set aside to let your growth side of your portfolio, that equity side, that stock side rebound back up. But I think doing that helps us avoid thinking that we have to try to time the market. Any thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, I was just thinking. So as you put together this plan, do you look at your investment strategy and your portfolio as far as your investments go? When you evaluate and put together this new plan, do you make some adjustments perhaps in the different segments that you're invested in?
When you say different segments, are you meaning like stocks versus bonds, or are you meaning within the stock portfolio itself?
Well, I was primarily thinking about stocks and bonds, but you can also broaden that out and even address that issue. Are there certain stocks in certain market segments that you might look at that might do better than others during the recession period?
They say there's kind of, if you kind of look at history, for instance, value stocks. Let's just start like within stocks. They'd say like value stocks outperform growth stocks in an inflationary period like what we're in today. However, I wouldn't say go sell your portfolio and put it all in value stocks. To me, you should already have, a portion of your portfolio in value stocks. And maybe you've, tweaked the formula a little bit, tweaked your allocation a little bit one way or the other. For instance, like what we do for our clients is we're rebalancing quarterly and taking a look at forward economic conditions and updating our portfolios based on that. Doesn't mean that we just took everything out of growth type stocks and put it in value stocks. What it means is that maybe we made a percentage or a 0.5% of a, switch from one to the other. And the reason I say so small like that is back to the timing the market. With the Fed raising interest rates, we don't know, everybody thought, oh, inflation's going to go away, but it's still here. And, so how can you actually time when inflation's going to go down? You don't know. And then when growth stocks might then start outperforming value stocks again, we just don't know that. So one, in your stock portfolio, having diversification. I just talked value versus growth, but there's mid cap, small cap. Having diversification in that portfolio of what, we've got a great team here, but what you feel is, a good fit for you based on forward, looking economic conditions and where you feel you need to be is one part. Then that second part is, or really where to start is, like you said, stocks versus bonds. Bonds is what I was calling the war chest. And I'll say bonds, but that could also be bond funds. To me, that's the war chest. Again, pool of funds subject to less volatility than overall stocks. Now, I get it. Bonds are down from the beginning of the year. However, with interest rates rising, bond funds are going to start generating interest. And so that will hit its point of, decline and then start to come back up. And you're going to start to see an interest type of return in bond funds, which you haven't seen for a long time. But I think those are the two portions, that stock versus bond allocation. The bond funds is what I was talking about as the war chest, carving off the next 5 years of your income needs. Again, if you're approaching retirement or in retirement, and putting it into that war chest.
Okay, great information, Scott. So, as I look at this, it appears that the age of a person would make a difference on the type of plan that you would put together for these individuals. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that you had mentioned in your questions is, okay, hey, when is the timing of when we should put this together, this plan? Is it, do I have we were kind of, communicating back and forth. Should I have a pre-recession plan or a post-recession plan? I don't feel it's based on recession. In my eyes, that's more timing the market. In my eyes, it's more based on where the person is at in their life. If they don't need their retirement savings for at least, 5 years, maybe say 7 years or longer, then they have that ability to watch the market rebound and bounce back up again. And I guess the compliance people always love that I say past performance doesn't indicate future results. However, history has shown us that the market has rebounded and come back up. So somebody with a little bit longer time horizon of when they need to make withdrawals could have a, heavier portion of their portfolio in equities. But if they are within 5 years of retirement or, already retired, where if the market were to continue to go down, that's to me when they want to start making that carve off and putting money over into the war chest side of their portfolio. So I don't look at it as pre-recession, post-recession. I mainly look at it as where is somebody at in their life? When are they going to start to need money? And then we should be helping them construct a plan based off of that.
Well, that sounds very good, Scott. I think you just kind of summed it up very well then, right there with that explanation. That the plan that people put together isn't necessarily only for recession, but it's for their life. It's a plan moving forward, whether you're in a recession or out of recession. And if you do that, then you certainly minimize the risk and the stress that you go through as the market goes through its traditional ups and downs.
Yeah, it can really help to minimize the stress, the fears, knowing that you've got a strategy in place, helps minimize those fears when you see all of these different headlines come across. And as you mentioned, right, you said it scared the hell out of you. And, yes, all those articles, right, we can read through them. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. And I understand this can scare the hell out of people. And that's a big reason to have a strategy in place, is so that way you can focus on your strategy versus focusing on what's happening in the economic conditions. And then does the strategy need to be updated based on changes in your life, but not necessarily changes in the economic conditions or what the news article of the day is?
I really like that. Changes in your life. Makes perfect sense.
So I think recession's great topic. I feel it's on everybody's mind right now. You've had great questions that I'm sure a lot of people have been thinking about, wondering what they should do. And hopefully we've brought some value and benefit to everybody today, just in this conversation. I look forward to a whole lot more conversations. You have fun on the podcast, Jim?
Oh, I loved it. It was great fun. Certainly enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to the next one as well. And, I think that we'll continue to bring a lot of value and benefit to people. Look forward to getting into topics. I know taxes is something that's always on your mind, Jim, and our conversations, as well as just overall, what to do with our assets. I know you've talked about different things in regards to your grandson, Jake, family planning, estate planning. So I think we're going to have a lot of great conversations when it comes to tax strategies, tax planning, financial planning, retirement planning, enjoying the money. We forgot about that, right? Enjoying the money that people are really going to enjoy. So first off, if you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe on your favorite podcast player. That way you get notified as Jim and I continue to come out with additional podcasts to help you and help you reduce your overall taxes, help you build wealth, and help you improve your long-term financial picture. You can check us out on lifemoneyshow.com. You can also listen there to all of the different episodes. And then as we went through today, if this topic feels overwhelming to you, which I get it can feel overwhelming to a lot of people, wondering, where should I go next? Am I prepared if the next recession were to happen? What should I do if a recession were to take place? Or how do I just get that strategy in place so I can just worry about life versus worrying about the economic conditions? You can go to lifemoneyshow.com. Again, lifemoneyshow.com. There's a tab that says work with me. Be happy to sit down with you, have a 15-minute phone consultation, discuss what's on your mind and our overall process, and see if we take any next steps in helping you out with your overall financial picture. Again, it's lifemoneyshow.com. The Work With Me tab, you can set up a 15-minute phone consultation. Happy to help you if this feels like an overwhelming topic and subject to you. Jim, it's a great conversation. Looking forward to the next one.
Same here, Scott. Take care. Have a great day.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.
Jim Manning is not affiliated with Sierens Financial Group or AE Wealth Management.